Sandra here from Siser, Juliet, Beginners to Pro. Today I'm going to be doing a stencil design using tiling and also using the warp tool. At the moment you can see I have my page here and I've set it up to A4 size. That's customarily what I use. I cut my stencils, generally speaking, out of a thin plastic. It's either stencil material itself or the very lightweight document folders that you get, the ones with the thumb holes in them, or acetate, anything like that. Now, one of the things with doing that is sometimes, first of all, your blade gets blunt over time. So you might find that at the beginning of your stencil, when you look at it, yeah, blade setting's fine, it cut out the test swatch, it did what it was supposed to do, wonderful. And then you cut your stencil and you look at the front of it and you think, yeah, that's fine, perfect, take it off. And then you find, there's a bit at the back that isn't cut through. Now, most of the time, you can probably punch it through. Just take a nail dotting tool or something like that. Put it over a piece of thick craft foam or an old towel or something and punch it through and you'll probably find it comes out. However, sometimes you'll find it doesn't. Now, the reason you're going to get a bad cut isn't because of the machine, and it may not even be because of the blade, or at least not directly. It can be because of the mat. Either your mat is warped, worn, or not as sticky in some areas as it needs to be. And stencils are a bit of a pain with sticky mats, to be quite honest. They're either so sticky that you can't get all the bits off the mat afterwards, or they're not sticky enough and bits fly out and go places. But if you're doing a stencil with some very tiny details, and you can cut very tiny details on a Juliet or a Romeo, sometimes those little bits, if they're not stuck to the mat, will stick to the blade. And if they get stuck on the blade, you won't know anything about it until you remove your design from the mat and suddenly find, it's not cut through. Now, normally, if you've done that, that's it, you're done, it's junk, you can't do anything much to rectify it. But there is a way around this, and it's worth doing if you've suffered from that problem in the past and you don't like throwing away your material. What I suggest you do is you get your normal page size, you want to check the print and cut, and you want to put page marks on, and that will give you your page marks. So just print something like that on paper, because if you're using a plastic material to do your stencils, all you need to do is line up your plastic on top once you've got this printed and literally copy the registration marks with an alcohol marker and a ruler. And if you just trace them like that onto your plastic, you'll have registration marks for your design and you'll be able to resend it to the cutter if you need to do it. So I'm going to make this bigger so I can work with it easier. And I don't necessarily need it to be an actual circle. It's not really that important. What I'm going to do now is use the warp tool, and this one is going to be the flag warp. But what I want to do is kind of like a whale shape. And I found that if you bring this up, you get this kind of whale shape. I can extend the tail a bit. I could bring that up a bit more, and I could move that out a bit to make that a little rounded. And bring that up to flatten that a bit. Okay, now I'm quite happy with my shape. Obviously I don't want it that size. It's a bit too big. So I'm going to make it a lot smaller. Like that. Okay. And now I want to go to Arrange and go to Tile Array. And at the moment I want to do my horizontal lines. So I'm just going to keep one on there. Now the page size shows up in here, and so I can just do this. I can alter the spacing if I want, but I don't. I'm quite happy with the spacing. And I just want it to go like that. And then I actually want to have more than 2 rows, but for the moment I only want 2. You'll find out why in a minute. So just click apply and I've got my 2 rows. So the top row here I'm going to select, and right click, group it. The bottom row I am going to select, right click, group it. Now I'm going to come down here, and if I click on this, you can see the options that you get, and the one that I've got is a flip. So if you watch that lower row, I'm going to flip it like that. I'm now going to use the arrow keys on my laptop, and I am going to offset them. And I think that is pretty even. So take the entire lot and group it. Now go back to the arrange and the tile array. And I don't want 12 of these. I only want one, thank you very much. But I want several rows. But vertically, I want to make it more or less so that it's square. Yeah, I think 6 probably does it. And click on apply. Group this little lot. There we go. Now if I go to the properties, I can see that this is 19.1 wide and I want it to be about 15. So I put in 15.0. There we go. My height is 15.5. Now I've got it unlocked, so I can change that to 15.0 as well, and that gives me, so I'm going to lock that back up now. Now you notice that I have my mouse hints on because this will give you various hints of how to do things. So come up to arrange and I want to center it to my page. There we go. And now I want to move it down here. The reason for this is because if I'm doing a square stencil on a A4 piece, I've got all this spare. And all I'll do when I've cut my stencil is I'll get my guillotine and I'll just chop that top piece off. And then I can use that for things like alphabet stencils and that type of thing. But this will be my stencil. I don't need to cut out anything from the sides because it's centered. And I got a decent border there. It's plenty big enough. It's a regular pattern. It's what I want. So now I can send the design to the cutter. Now, in this particular case, make sure you click on use the current match page location and click send. And here we have my stencil ready to cut out. If you have put registration marks in, then you need to pretend that it's a print and cut. Obviously you don't print anything, but when you send it to the cutter, you get it to read the registration marks. This is my stencil finished. Now, case in point, every single one of these, all bar one, cut out and just pretty much fell out of the stencil. This one did not. Now, luckily I managed to get away with it because I created my own little blade holder. This is simply a propelling pencil with a cutter blade put into it, and it works really well. And I was able to trim off the little bit which was hanging and thus get my little piece out. But if I hadn't done that, the entire stencil would have been wrecked because of the position of it. It's one thing to get one at the back there, but to get it more or less in the middle of the stencil is just bad luck. So as you can see on this one, I did not put registration marks on. But had I put the registration marks on, I could have literally ungrouped it all, isolated the one that I wanted to cut and sent it to the cutter just to cut that one piece again. Easy peasy, because of the registration marks. So you may think you can get away with it, and most of the time you probably will, but there's always going to be the odd time when you don't. Okay, that's it from me today. Thanks for watching. Bye.